Welcome, everybody. This is Marc David. Here we are in the Conscious Sexuality and Relationship Online Conference. I have the wonderful honor of being with an amazing couple and two amazing individuals, Jennifer Russell and Bryan Franklin. Welcome.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marc.
Yay. So I am going to share a little bit about your background and bio so we can get viewers and listeners caught up. So Jennifer Russell and Bryan Franklin are partners in life, love, and business. They've led 20 years of transformational events designed to liberate people from limiting beliefs and the underlying assumptions that create what is possible. They incorporate the best of NLP, human potential, family systems, collaborative systems, neuroscience, sacred theater, and probably a lot more tools in their toolkit. Check it out. Business-wise, they've helped 7 companies scale to the billion-dollar mark and thousands of entrepreneurs create 6, 7, and 8-figure businesses with a unique combination of business strategy and deeply transformative identity-level work. Not a lot of people do that. They also work with couples to develop a deeper context for their relationship designed to lead them towards their own evolution. So they are a stand for relationships that have a both and rather than an either or relationship to freedom and devotion. One more quick piece. When they first came together, they didn't know how to do relationship right after each having experienced the typical patterns that most of us call relating. And with their dedication to growth and desire to become extraordinary lovers, they chose to build an evolutionary partnership brick by brick, developing some powerful models and distinctions along the way. So, oh my goodness. There's so many questions I want to ask you guys. And I guess to start, here you are and sometimes I think of the term power couple, but I really want to say empowered couple. What's your vision for relationship? How do you kind of context it? What's your overall, here's who we are. Here's why we do this in the first place.
Yeah, go ahead. You want to start?
Well, I feel like when I first met Jennifer, and every aspect of life just got a lot more exciting. And when I could see through her eyes a little bit, everything that I loved more. Everything that I didn't love, I started to like. It just transformed my ability to see myself, the world, and the future that we could live into. And it became obvious to me that dedicating my life to identifying as an us and living life as Jennifer's partner was going to be just the most extraordinary option for me. It was going to be the far more juicy and artistic and enlightened and rewarding than any version I could create by myself.
Mm-hmm.
There's something else that I think we do in a very deliberate way. I think one of the things that sets us apart or is unique is that we are very deliberate about almost everything. And, for most of us when we relate, and when what you read and or spoke about earlier is, we each had many, many relationships and lived out a lot of the same patterns that a lot of people live out. And, what we did differently is, most of us live those patterns on automatic. They become the automatic narrative we tell each other. Oh, we play the lover beloved or some such game that's basically living out the patterns of our parent, that we had with our parents, right? And so we continue to attract people where we play out those patterns. Well, the way to live an evolutionary partnership or a conscious relationship is to take that stuff off automatic and create a deliberate context for your relationship, a deliberate narrative, if you will. And when you take that off automatic and create a deliberate one, what happens is you create a relationship where you're actually growing together, evolving together, rather than devolving eventually and spiraling down.
Mm-hmm.
So we were really deliberate about saying, well, what is the context for our relationship? Why are we in that? And that conversation to have with someone is, why are you in that relationship? And asking the other person in the couple, why are they in that relationship, allows you to arrive at something that we'll call the third pole. And the third pole for us is the one thing, the one context that we both agree on is the thing that we're committed to almost more than we're committed to each other. most relationships, you commit to each other. Well, for us, we're each committed to this third pole, this third context, which for us is really about transformation. It's about evolving our mind and body. It's about being extraordinary in our relationship. So that as a context, and we get really detailed in how we define that for ourselves, but everyone has their own context. But that context allows us to know how to navigate conflict, allows us to know, when we're being conscious, when we're not being conscious. It allows us to continually have the feeling of growing together. So that's a really important idea.
Just to add color there, you get together with a new person in a relationship and you do this negotiation. And sometimes it's explicit and you're talking about it. Many times it's implicit, you're not talking about it. Like, which one of us is going to get to decide how the dishes go in the dishwasher? Like whose family lineage of dishwashers can survive, and who's going to be extinguished from the planet forever? What's the routine around birthdays? Do we make a big deal of them, or do we pretend we don't like them, or what? Or how do we handle it when we want different things? And without a third pole, you're just left with the two polarities of my preference and your preference. And it becomes a game of compromise. If there are only two entities in the conversation and they want different things, really the only solution is this time you get what you want, next time I'll get what I want. I'll try not to keep track. You will try not to keep track, but there's this growing sense of I'm not getting what I want half the time. When you have the third pole, we can ask, all right, well, I want to stay home, you want to go out. Which is going to evolve our mind and body the most? And we can both come to a real understanding very quickly about how that third pole is served by each of our decisions.
And the interesting thing is, when you do it that way and you're not going, I want it my way and I want it my way, and it usually becomes clear to us. I don't think we've ever asked ourselves that in the middle of a disagreement about what we wanted and not arrived at the same answer.
Whether or not, like, wow, I really hate that it's true that this is the best.
To me, that is so fascinating that you've found that third pole. You've identified it and you're living it. Jennifer, when you first mentioned it, it's like there was this sort of chill that went down my spine. It feels intuitively and spiritually and biologically, I want to say, correct. It feels like the way it really ought to be, and I'm a little biased because I'm agreeing with you here, but it seems that there's so much breakdown in relationship and so much suffering and so much misery, and here you've kind of pointed to this like guiding star almost, and that becomes the reference point. I'm just over here saying that's powerful.
Yeah, super powerful, especially when both couples have that conversation very deeply and arrive at the one thing they're both completely committed to beyond even each other, and that becomes your compass. It's an upward evolution from that point forward in a relationship. Now, we fight just like anyone else, but our fights probably look different.
Well, if we're always headed towards the same destination, we'll always be growing closer. Doesn't matter where we start.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to grow closer to you, that eventually will end in stagnation and stopping. I'm trying to get closer this way. So it's a constantly self-reinventing purpose. Also, we've been asked the question sometimes, like, is it really worth it? And it's very simple. There's no way I could evolve my mind and body and the minds and bodies of everyone I know on the planet and everyone I don't know on the planet more effectively without Jennifer than with. It's very clear that as a partnership, we're way more effective. So if I'm going to have my outcome, which is the evolution of mind and body for everyone, I need to be partnered to make that happen. And so then any kind of, well, is it worth it, not worth it, that's just right out the window. And it's just a privilege to be in partnership towards our goal.
I want to pause you there for a second. Something about you, Bryan, you can have a way sometimes of saying very profound things in a very casual way. So I just want to make sure I underline, what you just said, because I think it's really important. And, to paraphrase, you basically said, I realized that, like, I can't be my fullest me and my fullest impact on the world without this other person. And many ears can hear that and misconstrue it as weak, and you can't do it on your own. Come on, boy, toughen up. You're a solo show. And you know, for sure, I didn't hear it that way, and I know you're coming from a different place, but I think it's a pretty profound statement these days. It's kind of like we each come from a father and a mother. We can't deny that. It has to be that way. So I kind of hear you saying that there's a level where evolution can't happen. We can't be our best without this other. That's pretty big.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you feel truly that you can serve your best purpose alone, then your purpose is too low, and you actually haven't played a big enough game in life yet. And there is a stage at which the game is just too big, and you have to lay down humbled in front of your desire for humanity and accept the partnership of the best possible person that you can see and bring that about. Mm-hmm. You know, you said something like weak, and fortunately, I have a partner that wouldn't permit that for me.
Right.
She won't stand for my weakness. So, and, you know, she'll allow me to be weak as an entertainment for a few, you know, hours or maybe a day or two. And then she kind of just taps her foot and is like, all right, you know, are you done with the weak thing now so we can get on business and evolve the mind and bodies of the planet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, I just want to have one small add to that is, you know, we reserve, you know, the very worst parts of us and the very best parts of us for our partner. You know, they're in a unique position to really see us at our best and worst, and mm-hmm. hardly anyone else on the planet gets to see those parts. And it's through us seeing those parts, loving those parts, making love to those parts, mm-hmm. That you actually start to liberate yourself. And that's hard to do unless you're in a relationship with someone where you're going to be that revealed, that vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And then therefore those parts that have just been disenfranchised finally actually get to grow and mature in a way that they wouldn't on their own. So the idea that you really can't grow as much alone as you can, you know, with that kind of intimacy.
You know, without saying it seems to me, without you having languaged it this way, it feels like you're pointing to what I would call a spiritual dimension, a higher dimension. You know, it's I don't know where that third pole lives, but it sounds like it's in a higher place that's kind of beyond my little brain and our little brains and what it can do. So how does your spiritual beliefs fit into this equation here?
Well, I didn't have a lot of meaning for that word spiritual prior to meeting Jennifer. And I kind of thought of spiritual as a code of conduct for how you treat other people. Mm-hmm. So if you were nice to people, that was spiritual. And if you weren't nice, then that was not spiritual. That was where that lived for me. And you know, through my relationship with Jennifer, she's helped me get in contact with the part of me that's infinite, the part of me that's pure, the part of me that's indelible, indestructible, and which I will now call my spirit. And so she's been my spiritual teacher, and it's my great wish that as many others as possible get that same benefit. Mm-hmm. You know, of being in contact with Jennifer, so they can find some of the things that I found. So spirituality itself for me evolved from the pursuit that we described as the third pole. It didn't precede it. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a spiritual pursuit. It evolved into one. And I think if you get together with a partner and you surrender it all, and you be willing to be wrong about everything you think you are in service to a greater thing in partnership, you will eventually find yourself in a deeply spiritual pursuit.
In a way that's it makes me relax, because it's almost like the mind can't figure it out. To me, what you're both talking about is so beyond, in a way, reason and planning and spreadsheets in terms of, okay, here's how the relationship is going to look, here's how we're going to do it, here's how much money we're going to make, and all the details of it. Sounds like on one level, the kind of relationship you're describing can create in part a lot of uncertainty and a lot of I don't know, surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what I would add is to surrender to the other, the thing that's most precious. And in that surrendering, it's like it's in their hands. And this may sound controversial even, but for Bryan, his most precious thing is his mind, right? And this mind that wants to be right, right? And when we get into a fight, to assume he's right and I'm wrong. And in our relationship, we're kind of deliberate about him surrendering his mind. And for me, the most precious is my body, right? And I surrendered completely my body to this man, and to be in service to him, and in the service to his liberation, and in service to his growth. And he surrenders so precious to you in someone else's hands, and to be willing to kind of lay that out and trust that in their hands you'll grow faster, you'll expand more than you would keeping your own more limited sense of self. Right? We each have a more limited sense of self than our partners. I mean, our partners who love us. I mean, this man adores me beyond anything I've ever experienced. And what he sees for me, the version of him that he has for me, is so much less limited than mine, that all I have to do is surrender to become that, become that woman. And he the one that I see for him. So that's like, in terms of spirituality, that's kind of how it sits with me, is that we're each becoming that future vision that we have for each other, and laying down the limited sense of self that we each have from years and years of believing all those things. I'm not enough, and I'm not pretty, and I'm not sexy, and I don't make enough money, and I don't have a big enough career, and all of those not enough phrases just go out the window.
You both used the word surrender a number of times, and it's such a fascinating word in the English language, because we all can hear so many different things when we hear surrender. I think I know where you're going when you say surrender. I love that word. I'm also scared as hell by that word when I am.
Should be.
But it feels like such a transcendent quality. And I'm wondering if, either or both of you just can say a few words about that, because it's I'm just very moved by what you're sharing, and I keep feeling this underpinning of surrender, especially Jennifer, as you've just described, like, hey, Bryan surrendered this part of himself that's most precious. I've surrendered that part of myself that's most precious. Wow, surrender, like, what is it?
Well, so I would speak, I guess I want to speak specifically to the men about the idea of surrendering your mind. I think, although not in every case, in most cases, it's the most powerful thing that you could do in a relationship to create partnership. And what it means is this: track your thoughts very carefully, and notice every time that you consider that your partner, your wife, girlfriend, is limited, and that her behavior, which is perhaps unwanted, irritating, or problematic, or anything other than optimal. Any behavior of hers is other than optimal. Notice when you characterize that as a limitation of hers, as a need for her to grow, need for her to change, as the reason she's that way is because she had this past experience which was bad, and all of those thoughts. And anytime you think that, you stop, and you believe that what's feeding that thought pattern to you is your own limitation, which is just around the corner and outside of your view. Mm-hmm. And that her behavior is actually fueled by a divine wisdom, which is handing to you on a silver platter an opportunity for transformation and growth, for you to become the man you always dreamed to be. And all you need to do is believe that there's deep wisdom in what you previously thought was limitation, which is a surrendering of your mind, of your idea. And just be open and continue to look until you find how your view of her was the limiting factor, that you were the limited one, that you were the one that was causing the non-favorable situation, and that her behavior and point of view was exalted. And it's mentally one of the most difficult exercises that I do and I've ever done. Mm-hmm. For all the world, it can look like the limitations over there, and if she would just change X, Y, and Z, then you'd be great. But that interruption and stop has led to me becoming more integrated, more powerful, and more respected. It's really led to me being the man I am, led to me being an artist, led to me being a leader, led to me being the kind of father I'm proud of instead of being a father I was ashamed of. Mm. It's phenomenal. And it's all come from that one act.
That's pretty profound, really. And I want to ask you to pause there for a second. So he just delivered a beautiful communication to the men. Jennifer, I'm wondering if you would do similar for the women.
Absolutely. Absolutely, be my pleasure. Yeah. You know, so in my surrendering my body to this man, what I mean by that is literally surrendering myself to be the kind of the vessel for his liberation, right? And I guess what I want to say to all the women is I want the women to pick up the mantle of liberating your men, your man, or whoever you're in relationship with. And what that looks like is, you know, men in particular, I mean, this is across both sexes, but men in particular have been made wrong for, you know, all of their desires and everything that they ever wanted. And they get made wrong 10 times a day just when they get up in the morning. And so much of that, so much of what their body is desiring and what they're wanting is such like shame territory for them. And they're so bound, like literally there's like a lot of boundedness. I mean, even in those of us that tend to be more expressed, there's still areas where we're super bound up, where we have literally what I call arrested attention, where our attention is like caught up in this place and we don't have a free reign of our attention. And I guess what I want for the women is to take on liberating our men such that through their desires, we yes those desires. We surrender and say yes. And yes can look just like not making them wrong. You know, try on women for at least a day, if not longer, that their desires mean something good about them and not something bad about them. And imagine you and through your body and your love that you can love and accept them with the desires that they are most not right with in themselves. And how imagine a man that grows up inside of a relationship where his desires are made right. And what happens in a relationship like that is they don't continue to want these vile, terrible things. Is in a relationship where love is kind of assured, where love is given no matter what their desire, then their desires start to become really pure. And all they want for you, all they want for us women is to be happy. I mean, I think I can say that about every man. When I talk to men, they're like, all I want is for her to be happy. And when you're yesing his desires, surrendering your body to be in service to that liberation for him, then you've got an incredible man that you're relating with, that you'll be continually more attracted to, continually more inspired by. And so when I say I surrender my body, I literally am surrendering myself to liberate him and using anything and everything I can within my being to help unwind that arrested attention where it's caught up.
Mm. I love the way you both use language because these are really big ideas, big concepts, big practices, big wisdom that's, being communicated for me very clearly. And I want to make a statement that is in part about you and what you're sharing, but I want to see if we can maybe make it, globally for other couples. What I'm noticing is that, in a sense, you're both wagering at a very similar level. So it's not like Jennifer's coming to the table and say, okay, I'm willing to surrender all of this, and Bryan's saying, I'm just willing to surrender this much. It feels like you're both putting the same amount of cash down and saying, here's the bank for me, and here's the bank for me. Because oftentimes, I don't know that this is true, but oftentimes it seems like with couples, there's a differential in terms of who's willing to wager what, and it just feels like there's an in-syncness here in terms of that level that makes things work. And I'm just wondering if either of you or both want to comment on that.
Yeah, I think it's probably one of the things I'm most proud of about our relationship. It feels like the truest partnership I've ever experienced. I have a fun way of talking about this lover and beloved. What I mean is one person is usually a little bit more in strength and in power and a little bit more on the pedestal, and the other one is a little more of the lover, looking up as the supplicant saying, oh, thank you for for giving me your attention. And it's subtle. It's a power dynamic, right? And in other language, it's like somebody's slightly got more of the control or power in the relationship, and sometimes it'll shift. Well, that breeds either a feeling of isolation or a feeling of resentment. And if you don't have an equal parity, an equal partnership where you're each committed to this third pole, and you are both thinking that you got the better end of the deal, you know, Bryan and I would fight you to the death that each of us got the better end of the deal with each other. Like, I know that I got the better end of the deal with Bryan. He's the most extraordinary man on the planet. I know that I did. And he would say the same. And that's required for a relationship that's going to grow and not devolve. None of us want this, really. We think when we're on top that we like it, but after a while we feel unmet. How many women and men even have I heard, I don't feel met by her. She doesn't understand me. She doesn't get me. Or, wow, I don't get treated the way I want. And she's walking all over me, or he's walking all over me. This isn't what we want. What we want is this equal partnership, and it requires a surrendering. It requires a letting go, because we're holding on to wanting the reins. That's a problem, because it's not a who's got the reins game. You know, not if you want a partnership with longevity. So that's what I would say. I'd say let go of that. Like, do the most courageous and strong act that you can muster, which is to let go of the reins, because you can trust that that's the best thing to do. And it takes strength. It takes courage. You know, it's not easy to surrender my body to a man like Bryan, who's, you know, crazy. He's wild. But yet I do. Yeah. And vice versa. You know?
I think it requires something else too. You said something interesting, which is about, in many couples it's uneven. You know, we're both all in, and if someone's chips on the table don't match the other, that could be a problem. And I actually don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is the person in the relationship who lifts themselves out of participation to count chips and to measure who's who. You know, in our early relationship, right, when we were first dating, I was on paper about the least eligible bachelor you could imagine. I was still technically married. I had been a horrible husband to my first wife. I'd been, lied incessantly. I cheated on her. I didn't know if I could be honest in a relationship. I was realizing the depth of my misogyny. I was a misogynist. So I said to Jennifer on our first date, I'm a lying, cheating misogynist. That's not fully done with my last marriage. You want to go on a date? And so I was like, my God, Jennifer's amazing. And Jennifer understandably was saying, I'm not sure about this Bryan guy, but there's something to him. And she said early on, I'm concerned about this lover-beloved thing, where you're positioning yourself as a lover and I'm kind of the beloved, and it's a little bit unequal, and that always ends badly. And I said, well, in any moment, you're either loving or you're not. And let's not count lover-beloved, and let's not count chips, and let's just love. And if you find that it's more fun to not love me than to love me, then we probably won't be together. But if you find that it's more fun to love me than to not love me, and I find the same, then we probably will. And we both we just stopped counting and just kept putting our own chips on the table without counting the other people's chips. And that is what works.
Yeah, and we became all in a very literal sense, where the idea of fixing our problems through leaving each other, like, oh, well, if it gets too bad in here, I can always go, there's plenty of other men. Just even subtly having that idea, like, we did a really special commitment ceremony where we took away that as an option. You know, like, no more back doors, no more, you know, hands halfway in, halfway out. And that all-inness makes what he's saying easier. And if you've got one foot in and one foot out, it's nearly impossible. You know, so for us, it's like you be all the way in whatever relationship you're in.
So let's say for couples that are listening in right now, and maybe some couples or some people who are in partnership might be thinking, like what they're saying, don't have that. I wonder if that's possible, therefore, to have it in the relationship that I have now, given that I don't have that. I'm imagining if there are people who are not in relationship, it would be easy or it would be hopeful to think, wow, they met each other and kind of came together, and there was this shared understanding. So, okay, that's a possibility to start from square one. So I guess what I'm asking is, what would you say to couples who go, whoa, don't have that, want it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've worked with couples in both situations. We worked with couples who realized they didn't have it and felt an inequality of commitment to create something greater and then ended up splitting up. We've worked with couples who didn't have it, felt both committed to create it, and they said, I don't know how this is going to work, but we're going to do it, and they created it together. So I'd say just rigorously become the partner that you imagine being the one in the future couple that you want to create.
Mm-hmm.
And if your partner wants to be with you and be that other piece, they'll grow into it. And if they don't, they'll run away, and someone else who does will find you. Mm-hmm. And either way, it's the right thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah. The thing I'd add is I get a little annoyed. I get a little annoyed with women who do this a little bit more than men, but the women that have the list, and they're like, okay, my perfect man has got this and this and this and this and this and this quality and all this, these lists that they create of all the perfect qualities of the ideal man. And when I see someone that does that, I have them look at their list and I say, okay, so you've already created this. Now, what kind of woman would you have to endlessly in love with you every moment and focus your entire life on becoming that woman and throw away that list and just be that woman. For most of us, even if we won't admit it to our partners, we know about who that woman or who that man is. And so, being dedicated to becoming that, and then, sharing some of that with your partner is super critical. So number one for me, if I was going to advise a couple who's like, I want this, I don't have it, is number one, if you're in a relationship, go be all the way in. And then with each other, talk about what does that mean? Where are you subtly not all the way in? And then number two, I'd say, okay, so let's have this conversation called what's the context for our relationship? What's the third pole? What's the thing that we each can agree is the same thing, one context, not each of us having one, but one third pole that we're each more committed to than we are to each other so that we can grow together, right? And then three, the third thing I'd say for them to do is to have the conversation of what we call the present perfection and future version conversation. And so here's this conversation in a nutshell. We talked about surrendering, right? And it's my job to see him as presently perfect. He doesn't need to change in any way. And it's also my job to surrender to the future version that he has for me. Now it's his job to see me as presently perfect and to surrender to the future version I have for him, right? Mm-hmm. And those sound perhaps paradoxical. But the conversation that you have is, what is that? That isn't based on my preferences. Well, I see the guy that takes out the trash every week, and I see the guy that doesn't leave the toilet seat up. No, it's the man that I can tell is the one he's always dreamed of being, and I can see this future version. And then I dedicate myself to helping him become that. And I also accept him as presently perfect as he is. At the same time, it's both mother love and father love, paternal and maternal love at the same time. Mm-hmm. And we each express that to each other so that we both have it cognitively, but the real work is when you're doing it more like emotionally and viscerally. Like you're just sharing it with the mind to kind of give them some anchor points. And those three things are where to start. Mm-hmm. And those are juicy conversations. Like those are going to be some of the best conversations you have in your relationship.
So amazing advice, by the way, really, really potent and powerful. Can you say, I don't think we've identified it, and I've almost been sort of kind of waiting because it feels like it's a cherry on the cake. How would you describe that third pole for you both? The thing that each of you are more committed to than the other. Like, what is that for you both?
Yeah, it is evolving mind and body, and for the maximum number of people on the planet, us first.
And I'll expound on it. And it has kind of, for us, these kind of 5 qualities. And when we got married with these 5 qualities represented by the couples that we are most inspired by. And some of that evolution involves transcendence and growth being a primary compass for us, right? In every moment, how are we transcending what's come before and growing? The transcendence. Freedom. How can we relate so that the way that we love doesn't erode our freedom, right? Devotion. And how can we also love such that there's nothing that we do that erodes our devotion? So it's a freedom and devotion, not a freedom or devotion relationship, right? And so this is part of building this definition for evolutionary partnership. So once you have freedom and devotion together, then you have our desire to contribute, right? In order to evolve the mind and body, we want to not just do it for ourselves as individuals, we want to do it both for each other in the world. And we want to be in service to, and in contribution to everyone on the planet, or as many people as we can interact with, right? The contribution. And then finally, community. For us, it's really important to create a tribe, a family, and just to expand that community and to have the community be continually reflecting to us what we're not seeing as a couple. And those 5 things are kind of a further definition of what we mean when we say evolution or evolutionary partnership or evolving mind and body. It would have transcendence, freedom, devotion, contribution, and community in our definition.
How beautiful. And I love how those 5 pieces sort of finish off with community, because we're talking about being a couple. And all of a sudden it's being sort of held in this thing called community, which so often feels like it's not even in the conversation. In the average conversation, when we're talking about, okay, how's your relationship? What's going on? What's working? What's not working? How do we fix it? We might never talk about community and what that has to do with being a couple.
Yeah, one thing that I think is just absolutely radical, that if the listeners did this one thing, it could change their lives. Our community has decided that powerful evolutionary relationship is important to the community, not just us individually, but everyone. And one of the things we've done about that is we have an agreement where we can show each other the worst and the best of ourselves. So, imagine your worst fight with your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, where you're just the worst version of you. You're breaking things. And then imagine like 3 of your best friends walking in right in the middle of the fight. Normally what you do is show up immediately and have the PC, I'm going to glare at you and make sideways comments version of the fight, right? Or, if your mom calls, you're like, hi, how are you? Right in the middle, you just switch out of that persona, that ugly part. Well, our community has agreed to show each other that. So we'll get together in 3, 4 couples at a time when anyone's having a difficulty that they haven't found their own way out of. And they'll actually have the fight all the way just as intense as if no one was there, so that the community can witness what's really happening. And then the community offers love, support, guidance, point of view, and the resolution that comes from that is a permanent resolution. A fight never has to happen because it's really been witnessed by people who love you, who can understand you, who are not the other side of your same coin, which your partner is, who have an outside perspective, and you can rest, you can settle it. So our community has exposed our deepest, darkest fights with each other.
Yeah, I want to say one more thing, because it was so profound to me when I got this, because I didn't have this from the very beginning of our relationship. But we went through a hard patch a couple years ago, and we were trying really hard to resolve it ourselves because, you know, we were very identified as a really awesome couple, and we can do it, of course. If anyone can do it on their own, we can do it on our own, of course, and we're independent, and we're the one they come to for advice, you know. And so I had that, and we were not getting anywhere for months and months, and still kind of, it was crunchy between us, and you know, we were surrounded by couples, just like he mentioned, that said, okay, enough of this, you two. You know, you come, we're going to spend 8 hours together, and we're going to help you through this. And at the end of that experience, it was a profound change in our relationship. But what struck me, what rang through me was, you don't have to suffer alone. Mm. If you have any friends, I mean, we're saying community, but what we mean is just people that care about you, that love you. You never have to suffer alone. And there's no reason to have any animosity or pain or heartache in a relationship that goes more than, let's say, a month without just reaching out to your community and just them listening to you and giving you their perspective. They don't need to be therapists. They don't even need to be brilliant at it. They just get to come in and show you the perspective that you're each missing and translate for each of you. And we all can do that for each other. And you don't have to suffer alone. And when you incorporate that and realize that, you know, yes, also see a therapist if that's good for you and working. But if you don't have that kind of support structure and you do have people in your life that love you, which everyone on this planet does, then don't suffer alone. Don't let it go more than a month or two. If you've gone 2 months, that's too long.
Too long.
Promise yourself you're going to call four of your favorite friends, 6 of your favorite friends, and have them sit you through your fight with your partner.
Do you recommend the friends be in partnership, in relationship?
Better.
Because otherwise the worldview might be a more single, mono worldview.
Who needs him anyway?
Exactly. You don't want to avoid that. But, for the friends being called in, really your main job is just to witness what's happening and to open your heart to both people and allow them to connect each other through your heart around the issue. And that issue, what we learned is it got solved not just for us that night. It got solved for all the other people present.
Yeah, because they all had the same fights. We all realized that if we sat down, we could probably
like
enumerate like 9 or 10 fights that all of the whole planet is having.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I mean, really, we're not that unique.
And we can solve them. Together, we can actually resolve them.
Yeah. You're bringing me back to the word of surrender, because, you know, you talked about surrender as a couple within the couple, and really here you are surrendering in yet another container that's, you know, bigger than the couple, but clearly the right container. And there it is that it worked again. And I'm assuming that tribe is, as you said, it's like-minded, like-hearted. So there's an understanding. Maybe we're all sharing a similar kind of third pole. But how powerful that is, that, you know, you brought that ethos, you brought that strategy, you brought that operating system and said, okay, we're gonna use it in this way now.
Yeah, it saved us. I mean, in so many deep ways.
So many ways.
Yeah, it's important, really important.
So what's your vision for yourself as a couple? If I'm interviewing you and you're both 120 years old, you're on your deathbed, and you're looking at each other going, man, we did it. Congratulations, sweetheart. Like, big hug, big kiss. Wow. What would you say at that point? What would be the thing that was like the big kind of soul success?
Everything that I love about my life and the things I love most about myself came from a co-creation with Jennifer. So I'm living in the bonus round. Living a life I didn't deserve. I'm living in the surplus. So if nothing were to happen from this day until that day, if it was just mundane and somewhat unpleasant, I would have that reaction. What Jennifer and our relationship has created for me is focus, is um, an access to a true sight of myself, one where I can begin the journey of unconditional self-acceptance. Mm-hmm. And just to even glimpse it for a second, it feels like such a deep privilege. So, you know, there's nothing that needs to happen in the future in order for me to feel that we totally won the game of relationship and we won the game of life as a result.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well put. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
I think what I would say is already over and over, I've died into becoming the woman I've always dreamed of being with this man. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is as a little girl, I always dreamed of being the kind of woman that, was a thought leader or someone that people looked up to and wanted to listen to. And I never, ever thought that I would become that. I was on a very different track. My whole career was different before I met Bryan. And I found myself, dying into becoming that woman, like letting go of this other version of me and then becoming this new one. And every couple years with Bryan, he has this new vision of me, and I'm dying into becoming that woman. And it's always this deeper and bigger dream of who I always wanted to become. And the fulfillment that I feel in my life as I'm becoming that woman is so exquisite and so extraordinary. Like, to be loved to the point where you become so much more than you've ever become and you could ever become is how I'd imagine myself at 120 years old, having done that cycle probably another 10 times. And when I look and see us, and we're a lot of the way through this, but I see me being the most radiant, fully expressed woman that I could even imagine, and him being the most completely liberated human being with all access to choice in any moment, in any way that he wants to be in the world. And I see us as like iconic examples of radiance and complete liberation, having each died into becoming the new visions of ourselves time and time again. Mm-hmm. I guess that would be what I would see at just 120 looking back. And I feel like we're already like doing so much of that, but there's always more. Growth and evolution doesn't end. There's not a destination to it.
Mm. So big thank you to both of you for really sharing so generously, really deep, generous sharing. And it just comes from a place, I know, of such gifting, because you've gifted yourselves, you've gifted each other, and this is one conversation I am going to listen to at least 1 or 2 or 3 times more, because there's a lot for me here personally. And I would love for you to let viewers and listeners know how they stay in touch with you, your world, what you want them to know about what you offer.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Well, the first thing we want you to do is go to Jennifer S. Russell.
website.
Just read some of the stuff that Jennifer's got on feminine leadership, on evolutionary leadership, some of the stuff we have on collaboration and business effort. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some relationship stuff on there as well. Mm-hmm. And we're in debate about perhaps entering into the idea of doing a podcast on the topic of relationship. And that, if you sign up for the list on jenniferrussell.com, you'll hear about that as soon as we launch it. Mm-hmm. And we'd love to communicate with it.
Yeah. And I happen to think, and perhaps you'd call me biased, but this is one of the most brilliant hearts and minds I've ever met. And at bryanfranklin.com, we each have our own sites, and you can read his beautiful writings. He's just gotten a book deal in a book that'll be coming out in the next year that he's co-written with Michael Ellsberg. So I want you guys to look for that book when it comes out. It's called Invest in Yourself. And together, we teach and train transformational and entrepreneurial workshops all the time. And so if you go to either of our sites, you're going to hear about how you might work with us. And we absolutely adore and love working with entrepreneurs, people that have big dreams, a big purpose. and it's good for the planet at large, leaving the world better than we found it. And if that's you and you want to work in an environment of really high level, highly successful entrepreneurs and allow us to kind of facilitate a space where there's like lots and lots of contribution and rapid growth, then you'll find us on our websites, and we'll let you in on all those programs as they become available.
So let me make sure I got that right. It's jennifersrussell.com.
Yep.
And Bryan, your website is?
BryanFranklin.com.
Bryan with a Y.
With a Y.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So, and by the way, I heard you say you're in a debate about whether you're doing a podcast on relationship. I would love to solve the debate right now and say, please just freaking do it.
Just do it. All right.
I don't know what you're going to debate about. Okay, but whatever it is, I'm sure it's interesting. Give me the transcript.
Okay, here, folks. We're going to have a podcast.
Oh my goodness! Well, I'm not a podcast guy. I don't listen to podcasts, and I'm going to listen to this one. So you know you have at least one dedicated fan, but I suspect there's going to be a lot more.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, we so enjoyed this. This is our favorite topic, really. So thank you guys for having us, and it was really fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. This has been Marc David on behalf of the Conscious Sexuality and Relationship Online Conference. I've been with the amazing Bryan Franklin and Jennifer Russell. Lots more to come, my friends. Thank you once again.